He loved, I'm talking truly loved. He worked hard every day, 7 days a week, and it was all out of love, not out of duty or commitment or need. It was the love of the land. That's all it was. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. Be sure to visit Dan and Howard and Neil. They have books and CDs if you guys want to take something home to remember today by. And also, as I said, Nora, who did the excellent film that we have running inside. If you'd like a copy of that, you can contact her too. Our next speakers were locals and knew Romaine, I guess, as they were kids. And they have some quite some interesting tales. Are you guys going to do dual or separate, or? All right, come on up. We'll do the dual. We'll do the dual storytelling. We have Chip Cobb and Mike Gamble, and I'm really happy to have them because they have a local perspective. We'll get family and friends perspectives, but Chip is actually the one, when he spoke, I said, who is this man and why do I not know enough about him in this town that I've been living in for 30 years? I should know this man. So I give you Chip Cobb and Mike Gamble. Thank you guys.
Thank you for the turnout. I'm very proud to say that I am a fellow Vermonter, having raised in Springfield, Vermont. Can you all hear me? Okay. Our family farm is next to what is now Crown Point Country Club. That's the Campbell Farm. My grandparents were farmers. My dad's youngest brother, a family of 10, followed the family tradition and also ran the farm for a number of years. And there were two iconic people that folks that lived in the Weathersfield Springfield community knew about. One was Gusty Aldrich, who was a neighbor of my grandparents, and of course Mr. Tenney. And I'll let Chip and I talk about, as teenagers, our visit to Mr. Tenney's, who welcomed into his house. But I want to share with you, I want to back up a little bit further, back when I was a young lad of maybe 8 or 9 years old. On Saturdays, oftentimes my folks, my mother, my sister and I, we would drive to Claremont, New Hampshire to do shopping and visit family relatives. On the way over, we would stop at the farm, visit my grandparents and my uncle, and then we would head for the bridge, the Ascutney Bridge, and into Claremont, New Hampshire. But we had to go by the Tenney house, which my sister and I we marveled at because we thought of it as a gingerbread house. And in my recollection, I wasn't sure if, in fact, I was remembering correctly that there were, in fact, lead glass windows. But I looked it up on the internet. In fact, that indeed was the case. I found some photos, and the windows were there. We would slow down and hope to see Mr. Tenney outdoors in front of his barn doors, usually sitting there with his dog. And we'd slow down, and I would admire this beautiful home and so forth. But also, on occasion, we would see him walking to Claremont. And I don't recall if he had a Katahdin, Maine-style backpack or what, but he was walking. He never hitchhiked, he just walked, and people would stop and pick him up. So on more than one occasion, my folks would stop. My mother, as a courtesy, she would get out of the front seat, get in the back seat, and make room for Mr. Tenney, and he would sit in the front seat and talk to my dad, I'm sure, about farming, cows, the price of milk, whatever. We'd come into Claremont, instead of taking the shortcut, we'd take the main road past the old Coca-Cola plant on the left. There'd be an iron bridge that we came to, and across the iron bridge was an old general store. And across from that is, I think, the Polish-American Club. He wanted to get off there, and I think he must have wanted to pick up some nails or hardware, whatever a farm might need, and I would say goodbye to him. Well, we never gave him a ride on the return home because we always ended up going down to Charlestown, where my uncle Frank lived by the toll bridge. We would stop and visit him, make a loop back to Springfield. So that was the beginning of acknowledging who Mr. Tenney was. I asked my dad one time, I said, Dad, why does he dress like he dresses in old coveralls, and he had a long beard and hair and so forth, and sometimes an old straw hat? And my dad said, well, son, he said, he is what we call a good old Vermont codger. And I didn't know what a codger meant or was, and so he explained to me there was a person who was not accustomed or willing to make change quickly, was very self-reliant, very independent, but a very, very pleasant person. So I thought about that for years, and in my corporate world, I lived down south for many, many years, and nobody ever heard of what a codger was. They don't have codgers, I guess, in North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever. So when I got back, and then Chip Cobb, my high school best friend, and remains my best friend, called me up a few months ago and said, would you be willing to speak about your remembrances of Mr. Tenney? And I said, yeah, I think I would, you know. So I was going to come up with, a story about the fact that he was willing to share his life, but in little snippets. He wouldn't talk a lot, but he would share his life about the importance of the land, the farm in which he lived and worked and toiled on, and it was very comfortable. And for a man that looked like he did, he was not disturbing to a child. You know, I remember he was a very, very pleasant man, very approachable, and I enjoyed, briefly his company. And so all these years, we had heard about his farming and so forth, and that his diligence to the land, and he was the custodian of the land of which he was so proud of. And we as Vermonters recognize the importance of a land in which we are the custodians of, and realizing that he would not give up what was his life's work, his sacred ground, and yet the big picture, the big corporate world of the federal government did not recognize the individuality, the sensitivity and need to protect one small farmer's life's legacy. And so from that reason, I'm very proud to have known him briefly. I wish that I had gotten to know him better, but just as a child and as a teenager, I suppose that things weren't quite put in perspective as they are now. So thank you for this opportunity.
Good afternoon. In 1964, I was 17 years old. I had just got my driver's license. Mike and I were terrorizing the neighborhoods. I lived with my parents south on Route 5. And Mike and I had a hobby that we would drive around and find old dumps and dig for bottles. And we thought that we would become millionaires because of all these antique bottles. And back in the 60s, it was kind of the fad to collect these old things. So in 1964, the interstate system was grinding its way north from Springfield. It was bulldozing a path, and they were blasting. This valley was thunderous almost every day. I remember my parents were given the blasting schedule, and with the admonishment that you need to stay inside when they blast, because in today's world, when you blast, you put something on top of it. In the 60s, they didn't do that. They let stuff fly all over. So of course, as a 17-year-old boy that was dutiful and didn't do anything wrong, I stayed inside. Wrong. So I would go outside with my mouth open at the exact time that the blasting schedule would blast, and of course, there was debris and rock that would fall into the cornfields. You could smell it, you could see it, and you could feel it. I remember the stone falling on my parents' slate roof. It's a miracle that we survived all that. But I also think of Romaine Tenney. He was watching the same blasting, but he had different thoughts in his mind. He was watching this process advance to his house that was going to consume everything he owned. So Mike and I had this great idea one day that we would go to Romaine Tenney's house. He would let us in, and he would give us thousands of dollars worth of bottles for our collection. Wrong again. So we went, I remember driving my dad's Scout. I remember driving it boldly into his front yard, going up, and as you faced his house, he had a two-story, the Gothic gingerbread house on the right. On the left-hand side was a single story where he lived. I remember rapping on the door, and he came, and he was, we're strangers, young men, and he looked at us with a pleasant view, I looked at him and he looked ancient. In retrospect, he was 64, and I'm a lot older than that now, and I don't consider myself an old man. No comment, Mike. So, Romaine Tenney invited us in. I have amazing, lasting memories of what I saw. The inside of his house was a labyrinth. There were tunnels through his house. He saved everything. Everything. Newspapers stacked. He stacked things that were in likeness. Newspapers, egg crates, cardboard, bottles. He saved everything. And I remember walking in there, I remember he had a table there that was once a dining room table, stacked high. I remember a china cabinet that was full of stuff. We walked around. He did not let us into, nor do I recall going into the main part of his house. And I also remember we left without any bottles. But in retrospect, what I looked at was the fuel of the inferno that was about to occur. On September 12th, early in the morning, my dad was summoned to the fire department. He was a member of the volunteer fire department here in Ascutney. He later on became chief. He was summoned to come to a structure fire, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And I remember, and I went with him. I remember turning north on Route 5, heading north, and I remember my father he went from 0% to 100% in nanoseconds. He floored, I remember fishtailing around, heading north, and I also recall that the horizon was red and yellow ablaze. Obviously, there was a major structure fire. The interstate caused this exchange right here to be much different. You had to go down this little dip right next to this white building. That's where 131 used to be. I remember screaming down there, heading to the Tenney residence. When we got there, the fire had completely consumed and the whole structure was involved. It was clear to me, and I heard the voice of fire. I heard things popping, cracking. I remember the smell. I remember the heat. I also remember that nothing could have survived that. I also recall that everything was going to be consumed. I find it ironic that such a jovial, kind, peaceful man would give his life, forfeit his life, for the largest peacetime project the United States ever had, and that was the interstate system. The purpose of the interstate system was to open up commerce and peace. But in the process, it took peaceful people. And I find it now very ironic. Today we jump on the interstate here at the exit. I like the interstate. It gets me to where I want to go fast. But I think of Romaine Tenney. Every time I get on the interstate, I think of Romaine Tenney. How gentle he was, how kind, how peaceful, and how he let 2 strangers into his house and let us walk around. I think in many regards, there are life lessons here for all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Chip and Mike, for your unique local perspective. That was really, really sweet. Thank you. Next up, we have Antoinette Jacobson, who's been working with the family to actually get a plaque put up so folks will remember when they drive into that park and ride to catch the bus, to go up the highway, to go to work, or they pull in to do the parental switches on Friday afternoons, or you stop there to meet friends to carpool somewhere. They're trying to get a plaque there so folks will remember you know, what was sacrificed to make that highway and that space for our conveniences. So I give you Antoinette Jacobson.
Hi, everybody. Well, what we've just been hearing has been quite amazing, and I'm not going to add anything like that to it. I will just say that myself, my sister, and Patrick Cody from Brownsville, Vermont, thought that it would be a good idea to make a monument to Romaine at the Park and Ride after Patrick and Nora had had done a segment on Romaine for the Vermont movie, Freedom and Unity, the Vermont movie. There's a copy of it inside the library, and Nora has just decided that she will donate this copy. It's a 6-part film. She's donating it to the Weathersfield Library so you can all watch it inside. And the computer right now is queued up to a section on the interstate and the part on Romaine. So what we just, I'm a sculptor, and I usually work in steel, but I thought this really needs to happen, and I hear and see that many people also think it needs to happen. So on Tuesday, I'm going to be presenting to the Weathersfield Select Board a proposal, a 3-part proposal. The first part is to erect a stone monument at the Park and Ride, and today I have a cardboard mock-up of it that is stringed, roped to a tree, because the wooden stand I made for it broke and fell over. So it's there at the Park and Ride. It's on the knoll above the little shelter, the bus shelter. So that's the first part of the proposal, and that stone would be a 12-foot tall monument, rough stone, field stone, that would have the photograph of the house and 6 of the Romaine, 6 of the children and his parents and the dog, a photograph that was maybe taken around somewhere between 1901 and 1906, I'm not sure. So that photograph, laser engraved. So when they laser engrave, it's a very shiny and very ghostly, perfect reproduction of a photograph. So on this big rock would be the photograph. There would be a photograph of Romaine with his scythe. There's a photograph of it in the Historical Society, a beautiful photograph. And then it would probably just have his name and the dates, possibly. The proposal is still open for input. So that's the first part. The second part would be to ask the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation to put up a roadside plaque. And those are one of those green plaques that you see on the roadsides all over Vermont. And that was Howard's idea, that we should do that. And so over on that desk, there's some petitions that you could sign to request them to do that. I've downloaded the form for the form that you have to submit to ask for a proposal and what it would say on the plaque. So that's the second part of the proposal. The third part would be to have a phone app, since many of us have smartphones and use our phones all the time for many things. It would be a phone app that when you're standing at the Park and Ride, you could hear the history of Romaine Tenney, and you could also hear the history of the interstate and the issues, all of the issues that are pertinent to this beautiful piece of land and this story. And so the people who are there know what happened. And progress is a thing that we live with, and it's a wonderful thing and it's a terrible thing. And so Tuesday night at 7 o'clock when the select board meets, I will be making this proposal with tons of photographs and whatever I've got. And so you should go inside and look at the 2 videos, the video of from the Vermont movie and the video that Nancy made with Rod Spalding. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just add one thing to what was just said concerning the state marker. I just went through the process of getting one approved for my church up in Bethel, which is 200 years old this year. It was built in the year of 1800 and froze to death. So I know how important it is. We're dealing with a government agency here, and it's a political agency, and so we need signatures on those petitions. And so everybody here sign them, and if you remember people who are here and already left, sign them too. We need all we can get, so please, thank you.
That kind of concludes our formal speakers, and before we open the mic up, I just wanted to show, Ginger, do you want to bring it over? I mentioned that the cake that we had made special for the event, so if you folks, before we cut it, Ginger's going to walk it around so that you can see what it looks like before it gets sliced up so that we can all partake in some treats. It's not maple, but I'm sure Romaine will forgive us. I think it's yellow cake, but they did photos on the top of it of him, and I think it's Spot. It's a little puppy that he had when the photo was taken, and I believe Becky or Betsy Tucker took the photo. And the other one is the photo that I think Antoinette mentioned of the family photo around the turn of the century. Rodney, would you like to start off the family remembrances? I give you Rodney Tenney now. How are you related, sir? Are you your nephew? And don't forget, please eat, drink, stay hydrated. We don't want to take any food home, so keep eating. And then at the conclusion of remembrances, as I said, if you're the driver of the vehicle, Peter and Donna and Betsy and Sarah will take you back to the park and ride so you can collect your car, because I don't know that the horses in this heat can handle the uphill with multiple loads of people, and I apologize for that, but hopefully you got a cart ride down and got to enjoy that. So without further ado, I give you Mr. Rodney Tenney, nephew of Romaine.
Thank you. It's been a long day already, and I'll keep this very brief. I spent countless hours as a teenager in the 50s working with Romaine on the farm. Learned an awful lot of things, and I'd love to talk to you at length about that. But mostly I want to say that everything I heard today about Romaine rings so true. And perhaps the thing that I'm most pleased to hear is what a gentle, sweet, loving human being he was. And I will never forget that, and I'll never forget the lessons that I learned. I'm here, my sisters are here, and we'd all be delighted to talk with you for a few minutes if you'd like to stay around. So thank you for being here. Thanks to the folks who organized this. Thank you very much.
You're doing a great job. How heavy is it? It looks heavy.
Ted, why don't you get up and just say a few words? You're as much of a nephew as he is.
I hope it does too.
Go on. Please.
Are you telling him to go?
I'm telling him to go up.
Uh-huh.
One last thing.
I know.
One last thing. I'm Patty Houghton Arison from the Weathersfield Historical Society, and Nancy came out to look for the photographs, but as many of you know, I've been going through materials that were transferred from the town office to the Historical Society. And since her visit, I found something that just knocked me off my feet because it has to do with today. It is dated June 1st, 1962. It is addressed to the town clerk. It is the petition of the State Highway Board. And it has all of the surveyor's details, it has the maps, and it has the list of all the names of people that your petitioner believes that the following named persons are the owners of or are interested in the rights and lands to be taken. And there's a very long list. And many of you will recognize Weathersfield names, Smead and McAllister and Dutton and Randall and Pierce and Jarvis and Studley, Guy Raymond, who owns the house where John Harrison, my husband, and I used to live.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But when we get to page, let's see, 24, we have Maino Tenney, Romaine Tenney, and Myron Tenney. So this is, you know, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew about it, that everybody knew that we have the documentation, and they live at the Weathersfield Historical Society, so please go take a look at it.
Those aren't the names of the victims, right? The names of the property.
Next up, we have Ted Poland, who is the nephew of Romaine Tenney, and he'd like to say a few things that he remembers of Mr. Tenney.
Well, thank you. As I think about this, it's only coming here and facing the reality of what happened over 50 years that brings it all back. And it brings back a great many memories of being on the farm, of walking and playing in the pastures and the meadows, and knowing my Uncle Romaine. I think he personifies something that is not as obvious today, is that someone whose love of his work continues 7 days a week, something that is not probably as popular as common today as it's been years ago. I also remember my grandmother at that time and what she told me of stories about Romaine and about the farm and about they coming there to reside and to work the farm for all those years. And so I thank you for all those who created this wonderful celebration.
Would anyone else like to speak? Feel free. I mean, the mic it's open mic night now, so help yourselves. And I think we're getting ready to cut the cake too, so quick if you need to get a photo. There's also cake pops for the kids if they don't want the full cake. And I think we still have plenty of food left. And you know, like I said, please feel free to come up and speak if you have a memory. I heard that there were a lot of stories being told on the cart ride down, so share them with those of us that were here. If you've got them, we want to hear them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to take a couple seconds here to thank Nancy because oh yes, I'm going to do it whether you want to do it or not. None of this would have happened without Nancy's energy pulling all of this together.
Oh. And, so you want the one that has the song on it? Yeah.
Any stories?
Did you hear what they were saying? Everything. Oh, good. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Shirley speaking up.
I've never heard of it. I mean, I've heard of them, but I haven't. I'm so pleased that so many people turned out for this. It's wonderful, isn't it? Right.
Uneven ground and I don't get around. I know. Well, I've had one knee down, and that was the knee that I haven't had down is not happy.
It's about Romaine Tenney's mailbox. And I moved to New Hampshire in 1970, and my next door neighbor was Dave Sawyer. And this story is about Dave Sawyer and his first wife. Dave had known Romaine and had visited him at the farm and admired him and also admired the way he lived. He wanted to live that way himself. And he was courting a young woman, Nancy Slayton, and she told me this story. Right after the buildings were all destroyed, Dave Sawyer went by the home site, and you couldn't even tell there had been a building there except for one thing, and that was a mailbox on a post. And he took the mailbox home with him. And soon after that, he went to visit Nancy, where she was living, and he brought with him the newspaper story about the death of Romaine Tenney. And he read it aloud to her, and started crying at the end as he read the story. And Nancy thought to herself, here is a very sensitive person. Maybe something will happen between us. And then he showed her the mailbox, and he never actually proposed to her. This is the closest he came to a proposal. He said, and this was Romaine Tenney's mailbox, and now it's going to be our mailbox. And so that was the way he proposed, with Romaine Tenney's mailbox. And they used it as a mailbox for a number of years, and then stopped using it. And Dave had it, showed it to me, told me it was Romaine Tenney's mailbox. And, I've just given it to the Weathersfield Historical Society.
Oh, that's okay. I was here getting some breeze.
Can't interrupt me in town. Right. Thank you, sweetheart.
Give me a phone. I'll pick it up.
No, I really appreciate that. Even though we had nice weather and we did well, it was still
Yeah. You don't want to miss out on this.
You know, I've heard some people say that they don't want well, you have to really make a choice. Don't.
It's not an election you can sit out. You'll hate yourself.
I'm not sure if anybody's missing a cell phone, but a cell phone was found over on the stone wall. So if anybody is missing a cell phone, I have it here. It's a little black one, so if anyone can unlock it, it's yours to claim. Oh, actually, you know what? Hang on. H. Lawrence. H. Lawrence, it says. Somebody from Quarry Road in Perkinsville. Maybe they've already left. We'll get it to them. So be sure to sign the petition. If you haven't seen the videos, you can go inside, and I think this Sky Blue Boys, we're going to play a little bit more, and then I guess around 1 o'clock, I don't even know what time we are at, Peter will take a load of people back up to the park and ride. So you want to see Peter, the gentleman in the official horse driving hat, blue shirt, nice mustache, and he'll let you know when the cart's going to leave. Enjoy the food, and thank you guys all for coming. We really, really appreciate it. And I give you the Sky Blue Boys.
Yeah, they did find.
My goodness.
Yeah. I guess they couldn't figure out what. Whatever we saw you.